Well, friend, I'd like to thank you for joining us on another episode, a little program I like to call Create or Die. It's your host, Ike Allred. And it's time to get started. We're going to do this. Now, today we're going to break outside of the norm and we're going to do something a little different, okay? Sometimes we have guests on the program. Sometimes I have quasi-guests on the program. Maybe we're talking about aspirational things, go and do that thing that you always wanted to do, but it's scary, right? And we might go into that a little bit, but the focus of today's episode of Create or Die, I'm going to reveal that right after this. So that's right, another good episode of a little program I like to call Create or Die. One day it may become an online game show as well. Could you imagine that? You've got to create it or you die, right? The stakes couldn't be higher. That's not quite what we're thinking. And by me, I mean me and one other guy. Anyways, it's gonna be good. Stay tuned. But that's not what this episode's about. Okay? What this episode is about, it's about my secret, if you will. And you might be like, I don't know you from Jed across the street. What do I care about your secrets, right? Well, I'll just tell you, it's worked for me. Okay? So like I've talked about in the past, I've got this thing, I call it creative ADD, where I'm interested in multiple different disciplines of creativity. We've talked about it time and time again. And we've talked about the pluses and the minuses, and that really you've just got to decide what you're going to do and go with it. You're going to be a generalist or you're going to be a specialist. Doesn't mean that you can't be a master at multiple things. And that is the secret. How can I, someone who doesn't spend 80% of my working day working on web design, jump into a web project when it's been months since I've last touched Figma even? You might say, how is that possible? You're over here art directing, creative directing. What's the difference, right? Or you're working on an illustration, you're working on a slide deck, you're working on a piece of swag or a print mailer that includes a piece of swag, whatever it is. You're not spending that 80% of your time in web design, for example. So I still consider myself a master. Now, that is if your definition of master is someone who can do something really well and pass it off as expert material. And honestly, I'm not trying to toot my own horn. Once you learn this secret, okay, you too can be a master at multiple things. Now, this doesn't happen overnight. Like my last guest, Eric, talked about, you got to get time under your belt. There was a time there where I did spend 80% of my day every single day in web design. And there was another time where I spent 80% of my time in illustration and animation. There's been different seasons in my life. So now that I've been working in the industry for 16, 17 years at this point, it's a long time. I've had multiple years where I've kind of focused on things, but then these last 8-9 years, I've been able to kind of spread it out a little bit more evenly and still maintain those skills. And so this, my friends, is the secret. I'm going to demonstrate it on a little device that Steve Jobs debuted back in 2009. Any guesses what that might be? That's right. The iPad. Okay. So this here is the iPad Pro, 12.9 inch or whatever it's called. You know, it's got the M2 processor. It's a sweet machine. It's like as powerful as a lot of computers out there. So anyways, it's besides the point. Check my link in the description for an affiliate link to this iPad in case you want to get your own. Christmas is coming, so yeah. But what you might not have noticed right off the bat is what I was showing on the iPad is a little website / app called Pinterest. And that, my friends, is the secret. Not Pinterest per se, although I would argue it's probably one of the best sites out there for this. Sure, you can go to Behance or Dribbble to get inspired. You can do Google searches. But I've got, for example, we were talking about web design. I've got 668 pins in my board called Inspiring Web. Okay, so let me just scroll through that. Oh, I'm trying to do it blind. All right, so this is a bright digital screen. Everything's looking a little hot, but yeah, suffice it to say, things look better in my view. So what I'll do every once in a while when I got a free moment, I'll just be searching through Pinterest. And what's nice about it is you can take a design that you've already pinned and you tap on it or click on it if you're on the website, scroll to the bottom, and then there's going to be a lot more pins at the bottom that are inspired by that one that you just clicked on. So I'll do that every once in a while, and then I'll just add more. They make it real easy here on Pinterest to add it to that board. Okay. And so when a web design project comes up and it's my turn to create a concept inside of Figma, which is my go-to these days. It was Sketch, and before that, Photoshop, if you can believe that, right? When it's time and the stakeholder is like, hey, we need this microsite for this new event. It's up in the mountains. It's at this awesome resort. There's going to be snow. There's going to be skiing. We want warmth, yet energy for all the action sports that the attendees will be able to participate in. You know, then you've got that in your mind. This is the brief, right? You just start scrolling through here. Then you're like, that speaks to me. I like the layout of that one, you know, or I like the colors from this concept. Like they're sophisticated, yet they have a little coolness in parts of them and maybe warmth in others, pops of warmth, which is exactly what I'm looking for to, you know, fill the requirements of the brief, right? And I'll usually take like 3 different layouts here or concepts. And then I'll just copy them, paste them into Figma next to, you know, my board and just start pulling ideas from it. Like, oh, I like the way that little module works. You know, there's an element, an image element that breaks out of it or whatever. Or I like the treatment of the photos in this. I'm not going to do the exact same treatment, but it gives me some ideas like, hey, they use that texture. What if I go find another texture? Or, you know, I like 90% of the color palette from this concept. You know, how about I pull 1 or 2 other colors from this concept? And then obviously there's some color theory magic stuff, but there's websites that can help you with that. And believe it or not, even ChatGPT can help you. Now, I know It's a touchy subject, but recently I found it super valuable to just say, hey ChatGPT, this is the project I'm working on. I need to come up with color palettes for this logo. This is the type of audience. These are the general colors, keep within tans and blues, for example, and give me some color palettes in hexadecimal format, right? So you can just plug those in, because at least traditionally ChatGPT is mostly text, right? You're not going to get an image spat out of it. Now, as of what was just released yesterday, for ChatGPT, that may be different. But regardless, it can get you going. Or there's other tools to, you've got this green and grays palette, but you need some kind of tertiary color to help call attention to things within your design, and you want it to be a yellow, but you don't know which yellow. You could even say on ChatGPT or other sites, plug in the hexadecimals that you do have, and then find a yellow that works with it. There's lots of different ways. But, this is the secret, because basically what Pinterest does, what finding reference does, is it gets you immediately up to speed with kind of, what's going on with contemporary web design. Now, granted, if you stepped away for 5 years and went and dug ditches and then tried to step back into design in general, maybe it would be a little more difficult to make this transition. But as a professional designer who designs, creates things every single day, even if it's not web design, and that's the example we're going with here, right? Even if it's not that, I can get back up to speed thanks to reference. So that is the key. And so you could say, thanks, I got what I needed out of this episode, I'm leaving. But please stay, because we got more. We're coming at you with more, okay? That was the main focus of this largely unplanned episode, because sometimes, we just got to let the world tell us what we need to speak on, what we need to talk about. And so some ideas came my way through my talking about Pinterest and reference and things like that. Because another great way, so this is if you want to become a master at multiple things. It's like maybe you're not working in it, but collect reference on it. Stay in the know. Read articles. Be aware of this is a new technology that comes out. When you're looking at other websites, for example, think, oh wow, that's cool how they did this little interaction or this animation. But let's say you're new to this, or you want to get into web design, for example, or app design, UI. And this works with all kinds of creativity. We're just sticking in this UI web world for now. Let's say you're new, okay? Still pick up Pinterest, okay? And if you want, and maybe I'll put it in the link here, my link, put it in the description, my link for my Pinterest boards, okay? So back to the point, okay? So you're new, you want to get into this. Maybe you've opened up Figma or Illustrator or Photoshop or whatever. You have, maybe you only have Procreate on your iPad. You can still do this kind of stuff. So essentially what I would recommend, and this is good for people of any level, because you can always up your skills with this approach. But you find yourself something, okay, like in the web design board. So let's say I found a website design I really liked, and I'm looking at the buttons, or this collage of shapes that someone illustrated as part of their design. or whatever it is. I like the way they put the layer effects on a certain element. Whatever it is, just try to duplicate that. Just straight up copy it. Okay? And during that process of trying to find a way to duplicate what you're seeing in a design, whether it was on Pinterest or you just stumbled into a website through natural browsing of the web, where someone recommended a website to you and you're like, wow, that's awesome. Just copy that son of a gun. I haven't used it yet, but I hear that there is the ability within Figma to essentially just import a complete layout of page, and it just builds it automatically. And so I haven't tried that, but I guess you could do that and then try to click into things and reverse engineer how Figma automatically did that. Whether that's going to be the best way, I don't know. And whether you're going to learn as much, I'm pretty sure you won't. So, like I'm saying, just try to copy it. Now, you're not going to use this copy piece in, a commercial project or, even in your portfolio. But it'll teach you something. It's a study, a web design study that you're conducting yourself. And you might say, oh, that's a nice idea, Ike, but does it work? Well, hells yes, it works, okay? Because that has been my go-to technique for training up new designers. Okay, we get a junior person in and, they've obviously got an eye for what they're doing, but like all of us, there's room to grow. And so rather than just being like, day one, here's a project that is due tomorrow and we need an amazing, homepage design for it. Instead of doing that, just be like, hey, here's this thing on Pinterest. I'm going to send you the screenshot. I just want to see what you would do to reproduce that. Go ahead, go wild, And you see how long it took that person, You can kind of dissect it, like how much did they pay attention to the padding and spacing and typography and how close did they copy these things, or is it haphazard and they were more worried about time, or maybe they don't have kind of a pixel perfect mental grid in their mind, or they obviously didn't use guides or a grid to ensure that things line up. So it teaches you a bunch. But I can tell you from my experience that, not only is it a good tool for, a senior kind of manager person who's trying to train up these junior designers, but it's amazing for that individual. So let's just pretend, okay, like you want to do something new, creative for yourself, something you haven't done before. And whether that's After Effects, whether that's vector illustration, you've just been in a world of drawing digitally on your iPad, or got, totally analog in your sketchbook, and you've always been afraid to get into the vectors. Well, this is my challenge to you is, again, I'm going to share my link to the Pinterest. There's a whole section on, 2D illustration, iconography, web, 3D, all the things. You find you something that interests you and go ahead and do your best at trying to reproduce it. And feel free to reach out like, hey, I'm trying to do this and I didn't get very far. You got any pointers? And I might respond in the comment like, yeah, do this. Or, check out this tutorial online. Or maybe it'll even be, official Create or Die tutorial. So you could take part in helping to build the brand, the YouTube channel, the community. How would that feel, right? Pretty powerful, I'm sure, right? Or not. But regardless, just give that a try. Okay? I remember the first time I heard of such a thing was going way back. You know, I started out drawing, you know. I remember one of my earliest memories of, hey, this kid might be a decent drawer, was like a doctor checkup. I was probably 4 or 5, and the doctor was like, okay, let's see, you know, we're gonna test your hand-eye coordination and the movement of your hand and all that. Can you draw me a square? Boom, I knocked that square out. Whoa, okay. Can you draw me a circle? Well, it wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. I mean, who can draw a perfect circle? Unless you use your shoulder, that's like a, you know, freaking compass or something, right? But I got us off track again, didn't I? Here I go, talking about me like I'm something special. That's the danger of not having someone across from me to talk to. I just say stuff that y'all might not want to hear. Okay, so yeah, the doctor was impressed that I could draw a square and a circle. Whoop-de-freaking-do. And I'll even take it a step further. I could draw a triangle too. Okay. Rectangle, I might not have been familiar with that word, but after some explanation, I did it. Regardless, what I'm trying to say is drawing was my first love, okay? And early on, I remember hearing somebody, it was you maybe on a TV show, you know, about learning to draw, because we didn't have the internet. There was no YouTube back then. Close your ears, Gen Zers out there. It was some dark times. But someone said, you know, how do I learn how to draw? What should I do? Oh, just go trace stuff. You know, take a piece of paper, you know, coloring book. The lines are really dark. You'll be able to see them through the thin piece of typing paper, because that's what we called it back then, because it wasn't, you know, printer paper, because there were no and, you know, practice drawing it. And I remember thinking, oh, that's cheating, huh? You know, it's dumb. But for someone who has never done it or is new, that's actually a really good technique. I mean, how do I pull the lines? I mean, look at some of these children's teach you how to write books, right? There's like dotted lines or a shape of a letter, and you draw the letter inside of it, and there's little arrows that say pull this way and then that way for an L. It's a similar thing with tracing something. So this is kind of the high-tech way of tracing. Now, you don't necessarily have to work over top of the screenshot of an illustration and trace it in Illustrator, but you could. But you could also have it side by side if you feel more comfortable that way, and you're just kind of referring back to it. Or, you know, if it's a web design thing, you're rebuilding UI in Figma. So, a couple of tips there. I hope you found them helpful, and I hope after you've tried them that you will be able to expand your mind as far as what's possible. What can you learn? Because it ain't nothing worse than somebody who just says, I can't do that. You know, I'm not a designer. I'm not an artist. Well, that may be, but the second you declare that you are, then guess what? You are. And if you want others to start believing that, then you got to put in the time. You got to put in the practice, and this is a way to practice. All right. So here I've talked for 9 to 30 minutes already, and it's been good. It's been good, and I'm a happy guy. If you can't tell, I know that there's been some episodes where maybe the world's a little heavier, and I get a little real, and maybe some of y'all are thinking, I come to this podcast because I want to be entertained. I want to be uplifted. And that's great, and I hope I can deliver that to you more often than not. But my niche, if you will, is me. All right? Big dude, heavy frame glasses, likes lots of things, watches football, has a big family, has a boat, goes snowboarding, works for a living. All those things are me. And I'm also someone who feels the feels, okay? Because when you're doing all these things, you're trying to balance them, you're spinning those plates, and you're seeing other people around you, and you're like, wow, that person is in shape, they eat well, they're smart, they're able to interject in those meetings, and they have the perfect ideas, and they research to back them up. And you're thinking, man, my brain is fried right now. Essentially what I'm trying to say is that you're assuming that that person that has it all together really does have it all together. But you're only seeing the side of you, the side of them that you or they want to present. And I've learned this the hard way, time and time again. I recently found out that someone who I would call my friend and a coworker who, fits the mold that I was just talking about, seems to have it all together, young dad, with, in his career, in his early 30s, kicking butt, taking names, just a good human overall, great personality. And until a couple hours ago, I thought he didn't have any problems. There was nothing but good things, right? But then I found out that, guess what? Just like the rest of us, he has problems too. And I just found out prior to turning on the camera and rolling this tape that, he's going through painful divorce. And, that he believed that, he would be, that family unit of his would look like it did forever, and this happens a lot. We've unfortunately seen divorce and other things increase over time, and the world, it's crazy out there. But after a long time, and he was brave enough to kind of share publicly what he's been struggling with, and brought me to tears. And so as much as I try to bring it in these podcasts and say that or try to express in the way I act and everything that I'm just 100% happy. If you've listened to other episodes, that's not true. That I struggle with things, of course. But my aim more than entertain you even, which I love you. Thank you for listening, watching, being a part of this movement, this thing that we're doing here, Creator Die. Much as I love you for that, I've decided I gotta be real, gotta be myself. And sometimes that's goofy, and sometimes I specifically, purposefully use silly slang or self-deprecate or act like a weirdo or show the fact that I'm a little down or depressed. That's the whole package. Because I've seen, unfortunately, this past year as well, an example of another person who I thought had it all together. Was just seemed so outgoing, so capable, so loved, and yet he took his life in a moment of weakness over, I'm not even gonna presume to understand why or what. I know, like everybody, there were some things going on in his life that he couldn't control, or at least at that point felt like he couldn't control them, and took his own freaking life. And even today it pisses me off because he was too good of a human, and I do not want to see that happen again. I know it will. I hate it. I hate that. But one of the goals of this podcast, of this whole effort of my trying to be straight up with y'all about kind of pulling back the covers, the curtains, the shade, whatever you want to call it, of the commercial art world, be it design or illustration or animation, photography, videography, woodworking, programming, whatever it is, to let you know that we're all fragile humans and we have good days and bad days. And I feel like if we can be genuinely, truly us in a way that doesn't hurt others, obviously you can't control what 100% whether someone's offended by your stupid looking face. Just kidding. No, by anything, and I'm talking about me, all right? I'm the epitome of what the world would say is privilege, right? Like I'm the white male, I'm the man. And I'm not trying to get political, but it's just a reality. And I just want to, let you all know that despite what you see, this outward version of who you think I am, that I am multi-dimensional. I have, my thoughts that are different than yours. My upbringing was different than yours. I dealt with things that, there's been no stranger about things that I struggle with physically, like gout and being overweight and sleep apnea and probably diabetic or pre-diabetic, but I'm not going to go to the doctor to find out, okay, because they got nothing but bad news over there. Just kidding. But like I'm coming from a place where, and I hope to look at others in the same way. I hope that we can all do that. It's just realize that no matter what looks like is going on the outside from someone, that none of us have walked in that person's shoes. And we can't pretend to know what pain is or the joy or whatever that person is going through. And this has gotten extremely kind of real and raw, and hopefully it's not too much of a downer to y'all. But just wanted to get that out there because I feel a bit of a responsibility coming out here on the weekly, sometimes more, with tutorials and different things, and portraying this guy who, despite his physical advantages or disadvantages, you are able to gather what you want. I hear some people tell me, man, whenever I think like I don't have enough time or I can't do this project or that, I just think about you, Ike, and how you're able to just get so much done. And I appreciate that. That's a compliment for sure. But it's not like that's always been the case, or that really I'm getting any more done than you. You may be better at doing stuff for your family, or your wife, or around the house. Not that there are things that a wife should do or stuff. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying, to be successful at anything, you're going to be out of balance because you've got to put more effort in that thing that you're trying to grow at that one time. This may be a dumb example, but let's say you're working out and you know that your biceps need some help, and you're putting a lot of time into those biceps, because if you just continue to work the biceps the same amount as your triceps and your legs or whatever, then you're not going to see the growth. You're not going to become the best at biceps, whatever that looks like. You can tell I'm not like a professional bodybuilder or anything. I play one on TV, but it's just like that in life. I don't think it's possible to be perfectly balanced in life. You've just got to be spinning those plates. It's like, this plate needs my attention, I'll give it a couple extra rotations. No, now this plate does, give it extra rotations. But there are things that we can all eliminate from our lives. There are some plates that we can just let drop. Like now that my football teams aren't winning, I don't have to watch the games. That gives me some more time. Right? Or maybe you could, rather than spend an hour eating breakfast in the morning, you could eat a 5-minute breakfast and spend 55 minutes on making progress on that thing that you're trying to create. Or you wake up an hour early. Because if you woke up an hour early every day, guess what? That's a whole extra working day a week, essentially, right? I mean, if you were to take 7 days a week and 1 hour, that's 7 hours, which is almost 8 hours, which is a working day, right? And I don't necessarily recommend you work 7 days a week. I take Sundays off, even on my side stuff. That doesn't mean I don't ever sketch something, but it's just all just easy, loose, trying not to stress myself out, or you need a day of rest. So there you go. Those are just some of my thoughts. Some of them heavy, some of them less heavy. I hope something's been of value to you. And I thank you once again for listening. And if you're still with us, give yourself a pat on the back, because it's not easy, because I shared that killer secret like way early on in the video, which is probably not the right way to do these things. You want people to get all the way to the end. But again, that's me being me. I didn't, I'm a nice guy. Don't want to hold things back for too long. You may even think, wow, it's a bait and switch. That was a dumb secret. Well, to each his or her own, right? But if you did find value in this program, you do find value in these podcasts, give us a like, give us a follow on YouTube or Spotify or Apple, wherever you get your fresh serving of Create or Die. So until next time, my friends, just keep on creating. Create or die.